Grace Vire from Federate Cooperative Limited, Lisa Paula Senrita Tancun from Mount Royal University, Marianne Deutscher from K+S Potash Canada, Kavita Britton from Potash Corp. Competitors, you will have 20 minutes to present. Immediately following the presentation, judges will have a total of 5 minutes to ask the presentators questions. The volunteer timekeeper will show time cards at various intervals to indicate the remaining time and will stop any speaker who exceeds this time. No questions, comments, cell phones, picture taking is allowed by the audience at any time. The audience will only be permitted to applaud following the Q&A period. The audience is banned from any material that bears the name or symbol of the university competing. We ask the audience exit the room following the Q&A. You can begin whenever you're ready.
I want you to first imagine a situation where there's two neighbors living together, side by side. They share some similarities, like living in the same neighborhood, getting the same mail, but there's a lot of differences when you boil it down to its component parts. Now, taking this example even further, let's look at Canada and the US. Now, for the US, when newcomers come in, they're really forced to assimilate to one sort of culture. It's a melting pot, essentially. But when you consider the flip side of Canada and how it promotes diversity and inclusion of all these mixture of cultures that form a mosaic, then you have a really unique perspective. Mr. Cook, we're here today. My name is Sam, and with my colleagues Jen and Aaron, Team J from GSA Consulting, are here to tell you exactly an action plan to look at how this merger is going to impact your bottom line results in the future and how you're going to manage your human resources moving forward.
So, Mr. Cook, it's been 2 weeks. 2 weeks since these neighbors came together. Former rivals, now 500 of your former rivals' employees are now in your own company. And we know this is a time of a lot of uncertainty, doubt, confusion. But my team is excited today to share with you our recommendation, which will allow you to successfully integrate the employees of Pareto and Halcyon in order to lead them to productivity and profitability for the future. So today we've outlined these 3 challenges that you see behind me, which are ones that we'd like you to tackle first and foremost in order for this successful integration. The first one being the fact that there is a difference in the work structures and the job designs between your existing Pareto employees as well as the new Halcyon employees. Secondly, the fact that the compensation currently is inequitable. And finally, the fact that there's simply just a lot of conflict, differing perspectives, and opinions between these two employee groups coming together. So given all that, we're very excited today to share with you our 3-part recommendation strategy in order to help you achieve a unified workforce that is productive and is faced for profitability. So to jump right into the very first challenge of that difference in work structure or job design. So we know that traditionally your employees have had larger consulting teams. They've had more bureaucratic work to deal with, and that's just been the kind of work that they've been used to. Now, on the flip side, Halcyon employees are very much about smaller, autonomous teams with that focus on customer centricity. So there's already that difference there, and in fact, we know from analyzing the State of the Union employee survey results that one of the key areas of dissatisfaction for the new Halcyon employees is the fact that there has been a limited focus on clients and customers. So that's one area where we see there's an opportunity for you to focus on moving forward. So the fact that there are these 2 groups means that there's a lack of clarity. We don't know what types of projects your firm should be taking on in the future. And that's something that you definitely want to capture now so that you introduce that clarity and allow that unified workforce to be productive into the future. So to jump right into our second challenge, which is compensation. So right now we understand that the Halcyon employees, the Halcyon managers, are actually paid higher than your current Pareto managers. And of course, coming into this new organization and doing the same work that they do, they're going to expect that equal level, that standard of high compensation. Now, this poses a huge issue for us when we also understand that on the other side, your Pareto employees, your managers feel as if they have also been putting in a lot of work, they have been working overtime, yet they have not been paid sufficiently. So the fact that you have to balance these two opposing forces is going to pose a huge challenge to your firm moving forward. And of course, the fact that there's that inequity that's perceived by these two groups is going to cause further resistance to these two groups coming together, which of course will again affect your productivity. And finally, we looked at the fact that their interests are conflicting. So knowing that these two groups used to be rivals, and now they're forced to work together in the same team, this is a huge consideration for your firm. And also, we know that there's been quite a bit of informal communication going on. We know that you have a social media platform where managers have expressed that why is there so much attention, why is there so much focus on these new employees coming in, and a feeling that they are being neglected almost. So the fact that they have these different perspectives on the new issue, and the fact that you'll need to manage that moving forward. So we want to touch quickly on why exactly this is so important for you right now. Well, to touch on that, the stakes right now are so high. So high. We know that $105 million in revenue is up right now that are in the hands of these 500 new Halcyon employees. And if they're not integrated successfully, if clients aren't satisfied, then these $105 million out the window. Next, we know that the Halcyon employees have just come out of a huge scandal. And if you're unable to show that with these new employees coming in, you are a unified front, then the scandal may spill over, there may be additional effects, there may be additional resistance, so it's something we definitely advise you to tackle now. And then finally, the fact that if we aren't able to effectively integrate this new group of employees, your existing group of employees is also going to suffer. So far you have been a market leader within the industry and you have performed well. So we want you to be able to integrate this new group so that you can continue to take advantage of that competitiveness and continue that market leadership. So now that we've outlined the issues that we have identified, we're going to jump right into the proposed solutions and the different alternatives that we came up with. So first, before I do that, I want to touch on the decision criteria that we used in order to evaluate our alternatives. The first one being the minimization of conflict. And here we want to emphasize that this is the single most important criteria that our team has come up with just because of the context of your situation. So the fact that there's already much resistance going on indicates to us that we need a plan that will allow to minimize that conflict and allow the two parties to come together. Secondly, immediacy of impact is also important, given that we have some employees indicating that they expect this entire integration to be done within the 3 to 5 month mark. Of course, we know that a cultural shift is not as simple as that, but of course we want to be showing them results. We want to be showing them that your team is working on it in order to instill that confidence in them now. And finally, we looked at leveraging the joint capabilities of the two groups. So you have vastly differing employee groups with skills that will allow your firm to be even more competitive when they come together. So if you're able to take the advantages of each of those employee groups, then you'll be able to maximize your competitiveness in the future. So the three alternatives that we have identified are a structured assimilation of Halcyon employees directly into the current Pareto culture, a focus on trust and leveraging differences, and then finally, the utilization of special project teams. So looking at that very first alternative, this is essentially using guided procedures and policies to effectively assimilate the Halcyon employees right into the Pareto culture. So taking them and putting them straight into what your existing employees are already doing. However, right from the get-go, we decided that this was not a feasible alternative, given the fact that minimization of conflict is one of the major criteria that we established, and we really want you to be able to look to the needs and the wants of both these employees moving forward. And now, evaluating the second two criteria based on our decision, we looked at focus on trust and leveraging the differences as the recommendation that we are going with. And Aaron will jump into what exactly that means.
So let's dive into the recommendations. But before I start, I want to show you the change curve. So on one axis, on the side axis, we have productivity. On the bottom axis, we have time. So we see your company right now is stuck in what's called pity city. And it's the very bottom that you see over here. So you guys have passed awareness by using things like your microsite in terms of communicating the change. You've passed that part, but now you're stuck in the understanding stage. And your employees at Pareto are having troubles understanding the change and accepting these people in. And we can tell this by some of the comments they've made on the site that's illustrated over there. So how do we move past this part? As I said earlier, you focused on technology to bring awareness. We now want to focus on connectivity and prosperity. And this is going to help drive you up the curve. And we're going to do this with a 3-step recommendation. I want to introduce you to C cubed. There are 3 areas we want you to focus on. The very first one is change leadership. The second part is compensation. And the final part that we want you to focus on over here is creating customer ambassadors. I'm going to dive into what these issues are, what these recommendations look like. So very first part with change leadership. One of the core parts of this is creating what's called a values jam. So we understand you currently have a microsite. We believe this microsite can be used to help accumulate and help let people and employees of both Halcyon and Pareto write down what their values are, what they value in the company, and what they value in their workplace. After accumulating this for multiple days, you can come up with a new set of values for both organizations combined. So very notably, AB and InBev, when Anheuser-Busch merged with InBev, this was one very successful tactic that they used to help the merger. Some other parts of this recommendation will also be management feedback sessions and also assigning a buddy as well. So for example, Halcyon employees can be assigned a buddy at Pareto who can help them get used to the move because they're moving both geographically and also to a new company. So this is another tactic that you can implement to help lead the change. The second And as a result of this, because of the open sharing and the leadership, you're going to be able to mitigate and handle all the differences and the conflicts between the Pareto and the Halcyon employees, which was one of the issues we identified earlier. So the second part of this is compensation. I want to introduce you to Sandra. Sandra is a principal consultant, or engineer consultant at Pareto. The thing though is with the new integration, she's actually getting paid less than the managers at Halcyon. And how we propose to help even out the wage is with a 2-step process. Number 1, by giving her a raise of $12,500 to help with the equity. And secondly, to assign a target of $40,000. So just to illustrate this a little bit more clearly, the difference in the wage between principal at Pareto and a principal at Halcyon is $52,500. So we say, why don't you give $12,500 to them right away because most of your employees haven't had a salary increase in 12 months, and the 40% can be assigned to a bonus target. But this bonus target is going to be based on the integration. This bonus target is going to be based on the State of Union survey, which was implemented. And I will go into exactly what that looks like a little bit later in the implementation. And the third And once again, this new bonus structure will help Pareto handle the pay inequity and will also align managers so they're incentivized to help with the integration. And our third recommendation is creating customer ambassadors. So we understand for your company to be competitive in the marketplace, in this day and age, you need to focus on customer centricity. That's the only way you're going to be able to compete. And seeing as how Halcyon prides itself on how customer-centric and how good they are with building relationships and clients, we think your company can better utilize this to help you better compete in the marketplace in the future. So one of the ways is by allowing Halcyon employees to lead workshops on how to handle clients properly, on how to better manage relationships. But once again, I want to highlight this is only done after the trust has been built between the Pareto and Halcyon employees. And as a result of this, your firm is going to be able to better compete in the marketplace while also giving autonomy to the Halcyon employees, which they truly value. And the second part of this recommendation is creating stretch assignments for Halcyon employees. So once again, one of the issues we identified earlier is the differences in work structure between Halcyon employees and Pareto employees. This is going to help alleviate some of the pressures, some of the tensions because of the differences in work structure by giving the Halcyon employees more autonomy in their job. And as a result, a shift toward client centricity will help clarify job design, and it's also going to allow for autonomy for the Halcyon employees. So what exactly do the 3 C's look like when we try to implement them? One in particular that I want to go over is the compensation. So we've dug out 3 different criteria as part of the survey that we thought the managers or the principals can change or impact or influence directly. So the very first one is support from top management. Do you feel supported from top management? Secondly, is there a bias to action and accountability? And lastly, is there focus on employee development? So currently the average rating is about 1.5 out of 5, and that's incredibly problematic because if it's not fixed, it will result in turnover very quickly. You'll be losing a lot of your talent very quickly. So we believe by setting a target, assigning a $40,000 compensation bonus to that if they receive a certain score. So for example, if in 12 months the average rating becomes 3.5, they'll receive a 100% bonus. If they receive 3, they'll get 80% of the $40,000 compensation. So this, incentivizing this will help with the integration and also once again help with the equity, the pay equity, which we outlined as a large issue that your firm is currently facing.
So we've outlined a lot for you today, and we really want to summarize this in how exactly this implementation is going to be rolled out on a timely basis. So what we've done is we split the implementation timeline or your action plan into 3 main categories. So that's the planning stage, the execution stage, and the control stage. For the planning stage, all these activities are more preliminary. They're more 1-month period events where everything needs to be set into motion for all these events to occur. These could include holding team meetings, having more communication plans, as well as training the management to actually instill the trust and emotion that is needed for the change to move forward. For the execution step, that's where all the nitty-gritty details actually happen. So the whole values jam workshop, the other sort of ways to incentivize managers to actually act upon these initiatives and help them understand where they can create value for both employees on different sides. And lastly, the monitoring step is more about comparing the feedback results that your management team has already received with the new results from a 6-month period and a 12-month period to assess whether these results are actually happening. And to do that, we've actually constructed an interesting approximation using key performance indicators or key success factors. We've isolated using a balanced scorecard approach. So this means looking at both financial measures, customer measures, as well as people measures. So for financial measures, it's easy to say that success is measured through your revenue generation growth rate, as well as just how much cash you're using on an ongoing basis. For the customer, we want to look at customer retention, as well as how many new leads are you generating over the next year. But perhaps most importantly, that people part of the quadrant looks at is turnover increasing, as well as is the survey proving that these values are actually being incorporated into the culture. And one way to look at that is by using quick wins. So if, for example, the climate is less tense, or there's overall project teams are getting along more effectively, that is one way to measure exactly how well the program is working. And we've also looked at a few costs and benefits to the whole implementation plan. As you can see from the cost breakdown here, the comprehensive cost breakdown shows that most of the costs that we expect your team to incur is mostly through that salary increase through the compensation structure change. So for the managers who will get that increase, we projected about around $2 million for your whole team, assuming that 60% of your workforce is located in North America. So we know that you operate in 5 countries, you have 2,300 employees, but 60% is apportioned all the way through the budget. Perhaps most importantly, however, we do want to emphasize that the benefits is what really draws this approach to be effective. And now how we got this benefits is that your management team has projected 5% of lost revenues from inducting this team. However, we feel that if the program induction does not work out or is not successful, then we realize that 25% loss in revenues may occur. So that gap between the regular 5% that you have forecasted and the 25% that we have forecasted goes into this calculation. So essentially, let's break it down even further. 25% multiplied by the overall salary and revenue increases that you're foreseeing. So $105 million is going to be brought in, but let's shave off 25% of that. And overall, the benefit in terms of cost savings, if you go this approach, will be $26 million. And finally, what we have to say here is that obviously there are a few uncertainties revolving this whole plan. With so many steps and so many approaches, there has to be some considerations revolving around risks. So one risk that we've outlined is that the values jam, or the whole approach about conjoining goals and targets, might not be face-to-face, as we're using your information technology to look at doing that. So one way of fixing this could be using a trial run process where particularly one division tries out this face-to-face approach. We realize that it's not feasible for all your employees to be face-to-face when there's so many, so we want to trial run it in the first place. Another one could be compensation or bureaucracy, but these two can easily be fixed by using coaching sessions as well as compensation plans like profit sharing. So we've talked a lot about the neighbor approach and how people with differing values and differing approaches and mindsets may not get along. But we hope that today, with our action plan and with our 3-cubed approach, that all these different concerns, all these different apprehensions that these employees have will be conjoined together to make it so that your goal of being a market leader in North America is sustained in the future. Thank you.
Ask for a clarification question. The 26 million, you went through that rather quickly. We talked about a lot of funds going out, and I have some additional questions down there. But in terms of, I don't see the connection with the increases in where we're investing dollars and how that connects with revenue coming in. Could you take me through that? Maybe I just
Definitely.
missed that part.
That's a great question. So right now through management team, we understand you expect 5% of clients to be lost regardless of how well or if the integration goes well. 5% of clients will be lost because clients might have signed on to Halcyon, they might not want to go through trouble transferring firms. So regardless, even if it goes well, at least 5% of people will be lost. We are saying that if it doesn't go well, 30% of clients will be lost. So the difference between 5%, which will be lost regardless, and a potential 30% if it doesn't go well. So if it goes well, 5% will be lost. If it doesn't go well, 30% will be lost. And the difference is 25% of the customers of the 105 million, which gives us the 26 million. So using our recommendation, we'll reduce from 30% being lost to 5%, which is what you expect if it goes well, by incurring these costs that we have outlined.
Okay, thank you.
No, don't
I
worry.
was thinking it was an added.
Oh,
yeah, no,
revenue,
definitely.
not
No.
this is
Cost
decreasing our
savings.
loss.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for the clarification.
No worries.
Can I ask you a question on your recommendations
Yes.
where you talk about Halcyon employees leading workshops and stretch assignments for those employees? Can you tell me a little bit about what potential the perception could be from, the current employees that are being, like 80% of the people coming in and there's these employees coming in going, I can tell you how to do this and I can lead this. Do you not think they're gonna go, who are you to tell me what to do? So tell me about that.
That's a really good concern, especially because your management team has already experienced that sort of struggle in terms of where's my role fitting in, how's their role. So our objective or our rationale for these stretch assignments is to give just a little bit more of autonomy and authority for these employees to essentially give them more motivation in the workplace. This is more of a short-term than medium-term approach where it's more off on the side to give them that much more motivation to work, whereas that team collaboration that we're hoping to foster would help the tensions or conflicts that will be resounding towards the current organization. Because we realize that the main concern here is that people are confused, no one really understands where this measure fits in, so that having that understanding first and then bleeding into this more autonomistic approach would be more our approach to dealing with this issue.
Did you consider, in terms of your compensation strategy, you put a certain portion of the FK at risk? Is that what you would consider to be the long-term strategy in terms of addressing the inequities between these groups?
Right, so we outlined that actually in our risk and mitigation. So this is definitely not a long-term strategy because as you can see that $40,000 bonus is contingent on the fact that these managers are helping integrate into the workforce. So of course that integration will not be going on into the future. So that's for the short term in the next year. And then after that, we outlined that there could be profit sharing and gain sharing initiatives in order to bring their compensations up to par if there are dissatisfactions amongst the Pareto employees.
How do you see that bonus integrating with, you talked about the scorecard and quick wins and stuff. Do you see that being integrated or, do you see it, like you said, just separate?
I think initially, because our first priority is getting everyone on board, getting everyone to agree, the very first set of targets is going to be based solely on the integration. However, in the future, you're taking more of a long-term perspective, adding the customer component to it, adding the business process component of it. So other portions, not just the people portion of Balanced Scorecard, is definitely a great suggestion, something we'll definitely keep in mind. So once again, for short term, we want to focus on the people because we think that's a priority. But in the long term, we'll look at other things such as customer, how many new customers have we acquired, and et cetera.
You said workshops won't happen until trust is developed and measures achieved.
Right. So we know that trust is a very hard thing to measure because it's not quantifiable. But we realize that with trust comes in a sense of buy-in. So for example, at these workshops or at these value jams, we'll be having a note of what exactly these employees are getting out of it in terms of a number of attendees, a number of responses given by all these employees, number of consolidated actual feedback that we can act on. And with all these together, that's some way to quantify how exactly trust is built. So for example, if qualitatively the responses are very negative, then your firm knows to exactly target what exactly they're not finding satisfied or they're not finding really ways to improve. So in terms of that front, that's more of a qualitative approach, and we hope that with qualitative comes quantitative in the future as well.
Really see, change management from the leadership.
Thank you.